They thought we'd beg. That's the part that still made Commander Ryan grit his teeth, even as the stars stretched endlessly ahead through the warped viewport of the arc light. The so-called Galactic Council, the shining beacon of unity, peace, and civilization, had decided Earth was no longer fit to exist among them. Too violent, too primitive, too unpredictable. That last word was their favorite excuse, but what they didn't count on was how little time we needed to leave them behind. Rian stood with his arms crossed, watching Earth grow smaller in the distance. Blue, green, and gold, slowly being swallowed by the curve of space. He'd never see it again. Not as it was. Not before they came to take it all from them. But they wouldn't get the chance. "We've cleared the system's outer belt," said Lieutenant Kepler from the helm. "We're outside their sensor grid. They won't track our jump." Ryan didn't respond right away. He let the silence hang, heavy. Then, "Engage the Exodus protocol. Full fleet sync. We jump in 5. The bridge crew moved without hesitation. None of them looked back. No one wept. They'd already done that months ago. The vote hadn't even concluded when the leak broke. The rulers were planning Earth's exile, not just cutting us off, but sterilizing the planet. One final vote to decide whether humanity deserved to exist in the galaxy at all. But Earth's diplomats were still at the council, still shaking hands, still playing the game. Ryan's unit wasn't. They'd seen this coming years ago. It started with the restrictions, the tech bans, the economic sanctions, then the protectionary zones around Sol. The Council claimed it was all for the safety of the galaxy, that humanity needed to be guided, that our species was a danger to itself and others. But the truth was simpler. We scared them. And scared empires don't play fair. The fleet was scattered across 3 lunar bases and 5 deep orbit platforms. Thousands of ships. Most were patchwork, refits, old mining haulers turned war-ready, nothing polished, nothing elegant. But they were ours, and more importantly, they worked. Kepler's voice cracked through again. "Jump engines online. Waiting for your word, Commander." Ryan touched the small metal tag hanging from his neck. Not military issue, just a flat piece of scorched alloy from a burnt-out slum in Lagos. One of the first cities hit by the orbital test strikes 2 years ago. No one admitted who did it, but everyone knew. He closed his eyes. Execute. The arc light trembled as the void screamed open ahead of them. A breach in reality, the work of stolen tech, reverse-engineered without permission, illegal, dangerous, pure human brilliance. One by one, the ships vanished into the rift. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait for mercy. They just left. 3 days earlier, at the high seat of the Galactic Council, the rulers had gathered 16 species, 920 votes. Earth was not invited to speak. The vote was ceremonial by that point. The decision was made. But when the ambassador arrived to deliver Earth's formal protest, the chambers were already whispering. The human fleet had gone dark. Thousands of vessels had vanished. No chatter, no ports, no trace. The diplomats tried to cover it, but panic had already taken root. "We believe Earth has enacted a full-scale exodus," said the Jarathi delegate. "This is a violation of interstellar treaty law." The room was full of raised voices, accusations, threats. Some called it treason, some a bluff. But one of the senior Tsalrin envoys, older than most empires, simply sat back and said, "You've pushed the fire too far, and now it burns on its own." Back on the arc light, Ryan stood in silence as the stars warped back into shape. Ahead of them, unknown space, uncharted sectors, possibly no one, possibly worse. Behind them, betrayal, judgment, and erasure. But humanity would not go quietly, not this time, not ever again. Set course, he said. Somewhere they'll never find us. Kepler hesitated. And after that, sir? Ryan's gaze hardened. We build something they can't ignore. And when they do see us again, he smiled, a grim, tired smile. They'll wish they'd finished the vote. The void was never quiet. It whispered. Long after the jump was complete and the tremors faded from the Arclight's hull, the silence that settled over the fleet was not peace. It was a funeral. Quiet calms, no music, no laughter, just breathing and blinking lights and the weight of everything they left behind. Commander Ryan sat in the war room, dim lights humming over maps that meant nothing now. There was no Earth sector anymore. No Sol, no Mars colony, no Luna docks. The grid had been wiped. Their coordinates now were phantom entries, off the record, off the map, deliberately so. He stared at the image projected in front of him. A replay. 30 seconds long. Security footage from 3 weeks ago, one of the Council's drones over Earth. It hovered for hours, silent, before releasing what they called a non-lethal atmospheric corrective agent. That was their term. In reality, it was a neural scrambler. Ryan's jaw clenched. He watched again as the crowd in Nairobi froze mid-step. Hundreds of people, men, women, children, collapsed without even knowing why. Eyes open, twitching, dying slowly, no declaration of war, no formal vote, just extermination disguised as maintenance. "Sir," came a voice from behind. It was Lieutenant Ansel, one of the youngest officers aboard, face pale and still too clean from war. Council transmission intercepted. Partial translation underway. Ryan waved it forward. A few clicks, a few codes, and the audio came to life. Earth origin fleets confirmed absent from Sol. Suspected unauthorized warp technology deployed. Recommend enforcement response. Under article, Ryan killed the feed with a single swipe. Same bullshit, he muttered. They talk rules while they burn our homes. He rose and walked past Ansel, patting the young man once on the shoulder. How's morale? Ansel hesitated. Mixed. The Civ transport ships are asking if we're safe yet. Ryan let out a breath through his nose, part laugh, part sigh. No, but we're free. That counts for something. The fleet was massive, but not a military juggernaut. Most of the ships carried families, scientists, children, even old-timers who couldn't handle G-forces anymore. Out of nearly 18,000 vessels, only 400 were fully armed. And those were held together with duct tape and rage. They weren't an army, not yet, but they would become one. 6 months before the Exodus Earth, underground labs, Patagonia Ridge. The smell was always the same, machine oil, sweat, and desperation. Dr. Halden adjusted the implant scanner while the prototype powered down. A humanoid frame, mechanical, human-shaped, but unlike anything the Council had ever approved, unauthorized, illegal, powered by a human neural link and off-grid AI learning cycles. Across from him sat Commander Ryan, younger by a few scars, eyes just as sharp. You're telling me this thing can mimic thought? Not mimic, Halden corrected. Learn, adapt, make decisions. That's what they banned. Halden smiled, and it wasn't friendly. Exactly. Back then, Earth had already been under tech restrictions for nearly a decade. The Council limited everything: computing capacity, fusion scaling, even medical breakthroughs. Anything that made humanity move faster, smarter, stronger was cut off under the guise of galactic safety. But the Council didn't stop using those same advancements themselves. We've got 3 of these units operational, Halden continued. Give me 6 months, I can build 50. Ryan shook his head. We won't have 6 months. And he was right. That night, the sky over South Africa went dark. Satellites down, grid fried, no explanation, just darkness. Then came the artificial famines, strange weather spikes, delayed supply shipments, then the orbital strikes, quiet, clean, deniable. Earth wasn't just being exiled, it was being bled dry first. Present day, deep void. The fleet drifted toward Sector Epsilon X-42, unclaimed space on the edge of known galactic territory. Beyond it, nothing charted. The perfect hiding place. But hiding wasn't the plan. Inside the Arclight's engineering bay, Chief Tech Mara had assembled a gathering. Not officers, not scientists, just survivors. Mechanics, salvagers, ex-miners, ex-convicts, people who knew how to break things and make them work again. Ryan stood before them. No podium, no microphone, just the quiet presence of a man who had watched too many people die because someone with polished teeth decided Earth didn't belong. "We weren't given a choice," he began. "They labeled us savage, violent, unworthy. You know why?" Silence. Then a voice in the back. "Because we don't bow." Ryan nodded slowly. "Exactly. Because we remember. We adapt, we fight, not perfectly, but completely. They want us erased because they fear what we might become." He stepped forward. "We're not going to rebuild Earth. That's gone. We're not going to beg to come back either. We're going to build something new, out here, something they can't erase." Mara leaned against a stack of plasma coils. "You want to fight them?" Ryan didn't hesitate. "Not today, not next week, but someday. I want them to feel what it's like to have everything taken from them, piece by piece." Murmurs filled the room. Faces hardened, and not a single one turned away. Meanwhile, Council Central Hub, orbiting Yatari Prime. "Exodus confirmed," the analyst drone reported. "Humanity has vacated their sector. Current location unknown. Probability of organized rebellion low." Chairman Virus of the High Seat narrowed his 1,000-year-old eyes. "They left too quickly, too quietly." "They fear us," said the Council's war architect. "They know resistance is suicide." But Vriss said nothing. He had been there when the humans were first brought into the galactic community. Rough around the edges, too fast, too angry, but brilliant, terrifyingly so. Within a generation, they had reverse-engineered half of what took other species millennia. And now they were gone. But humans did not run. Not like this. Not unless they were planning something worse. "Continue surveillance," Virus said, "and initiate contingency fallback protocol." The others looked confused. That protocol hadn't been touched in centuries. "If they rise," he said, "we will burn them down again." Back on the Arclight, 3 weeks into deep space. "Contact," Kepler said suddenly. "Unidentified ship, no council signature. Small but powered." Ryan rushed to the bridge. "Show me." The screen blinked on. A single ship. No weapons. Civilian signature barely readable. Human design, but not one of theirs. "Open channel." Static. Then a voice cracked through. "This is the colony vessel Duskwing, formerly of Proxima Mining Route 4. We received your Exodus ping, requesting fleet permission to join. We are not alone." Kepler looked at Ryan. "We didn't send a ping." Ryan's blood turned cold. "How many are with you?" he asked. Pause. 200 ships, scattered, hunted but alive." Ryan exhaled slowly. They weren't the only ones. The flood began slowly. First the Duskwing, then Orias Gate, then a small pirate convoy that had once hijacked a council transport and now begged to defect. Then families from Saturn's lost outposts, even deserters from alien worlds, outcasts who had lived under the boot of council law for too long. Humanity hadn't just escaped. It had ignited something. A spark. Across forgotten sectors and dead systems, people were moving, leaving, gathering. And now all eyes turned to Ryan. The Council thought humanity would fade into silence. Instead, it became a signal flare to every broken world that had ever tasted the Council's leash. And in the depths of space, where no one had yet dared to build, humanity was building. Not just a fleet, not just cities. A future they would defend with teeth and blood. And one day, when the Council looked out their perfect windows and saw the wrong star go dark, they'd remember the vote. And realize too late, humanity left before the exile was official. Because it was never about permission. It was about survival and vengeance. The dust hadn't settled in the Epsilon X-42 sector, and already the weight of what was coming pressed down like a star's dying core. They had run, but not like prey. No, humanity's retreat was a coiled spring, the kind that didn't unwind. It snapped back. Commander Ryan stood before the Arclight's viewport, arms behind his back, eyes locked on the endless sprawl of civilian ships scattered across the dark. It had been 31 days since the first refugee ship, Duskwing, arrived. Now over 3,200 vessels flew under the banner of the Forgotten. Not just Terran-born humans, but outcasts from other species too. Half-breeds rejected by the genetic purity laws. Species deemed unstable by the Council. Ex-slaves, deserters, outlaws, all drawn to the single unifying message that passed through the black like wildfire. We left before they could decide our worth. If you've been cast out, you belong here. Ryan didn't make the message. It wasn't an order. It was a belief. On the lower decks of the Arclight, the makeshift War Council gathered. Not uniformed officers, not politicians, just leaders. Men and women who'd fought, bled, and lost something to the Council. "Food's getting tight," Mara said, tossing a data pad onto the metal table. 3 more haulers came in from Delta Fringe with civilians. No rations. Some of them haven't eaten in a week. Kepler added, "Medical's overloaded, and our water recycling units weren't meant to support a population this size." Then the ex-contractor from the Mars militia, Callan, thick arms crossed and voice like gravel, spoke. "We need to stop acting like refugees. This is a population now, and it's going to become a nation whether we like it or not." Ryan said nothing. He just let the storm stir. "We've got engineers," Mara continued. "Tinkerers, people who used to build ships, grow crops in hydrobays. They're willing to start colonizing that small planet on the outer rim. Gravity's light, but it's livable." "What about defense?" Callan said. That's when Ryan stepped forward. "We're going to give them something to believe in first," he said. 3 hours later, in the middle of the refugee fleet, every active ship screen lit up. Ryan appeared on all of them. No coat, no medals, just a simple shirt and the tired eyes of a man who had stopped believing in comfort. "You weren't supposed to survive," he said. "They starved you, bombed you, lied to you. You were just a number to them, a risk, an inconvenience. And when they finished their vote, you were supposed to be gone." He looked into the camera, into their homes, their broken corridors, their half-lit cabins. "But here you are, hungry, angry, alive." A pause. "They wanted to exile humanity from the stars. But we are the stars now, every one of you. And I don't care what planet you came from. If they made you feel like you didn't belong, this fleet is yours." He let that settle before saying the last line. "We're not hiding anymore. We're building something they'll never forget." Within a week, the transformation began. Ships that were falling apart got refitted, using parts stripped from Council wreckage. Former slaves from the Goran moons brought mining techniques that didn't require advanced tech. Old Terran botanists started designing new food cycles, using alien crops they'd never been allowed to test back on Earth. Soldiers trained the young in simulation pods powered by illegal AI cores. The movement wasn't just human anymore. It was something worse for the Council. It was humanity. Expanded. The kind of chaos you couldn't contain. 3 light-years away, inside a forgotten junk moon, an abandoned relay station lit up with activity. Ryan and his closest squad had come to retrieve what had been hidden there over a decade ago. The Siren's Breath. It wasn't a ship. It was a virus. Not biological. Digital. Back when Earth still had a voice in the Council, a disgraced programmer named Elon, exiled for refusing to submit to neural compliance standards, had buried a rogue AI seed deep in Council comms code. It never activated. Until now. The Siren's Breath wasn't a hack. It was a mimic. It could replicate official Council communications, scramble internal directives, confuse ship hierarchies, and simulate emergency orders across hundreds of systems. And no one would see it coming. Ryan stood with Mara and Kepler as the device hummed to life. "You're really going to use it?" Mara asked. "They started this war by playing gods," Ryan said. "Let's see how they handle a devil." Meanwhile, deep within Council-controlled space, the Council's fleet station Virelian Prime suffered a complete shutdown. It began with an urgent evacuation order, one that never came from command. Then internal AI systems began misidentifying civilian transports as warships. Automated defenses triggered. 27 ships were lost before the plug was pulled. In the aftermath, no trace of malware could be found. Vriss, the ancient chairman, reviewed the footage alone. He watched as automated fire rained down on civilians. Screams, metal ripping apart. He said nothing. But he knew. Human hands had done this, and they had done it without firing a single shot. Back in Epsilon X-42, the hidden colony had begun to grow. They called it Ashvale, a name born from the ashes they'd left behind. Ryan stood at the edge of its construction site. No walls, just a cleared landing zone, temporary shelters, and a dozen children playing with salvaged metal. But it was real. It was theirs. Callan approached, nodding toward the horizon. "Council's going to come looking. Probably not today, not next month. But when they do, we need more than hiding places." Ryan nodded. "They'll come for vengeance, or for control." "You think we can take them?" Ryan didn't answer. He was watching the children. "They've never knelt," he finally said. "They never learned how." Callan's rough voice softened. "Then maybe we teach them how to fight instead." In the depths of the arc light, the first of the Widow-class warships was under construction. Skeletal, ugly, brutalist. No smooth curves, just hard metal and rage. No warp engines. Instead, quantum skips, unstable, illegal tech that allowed brief jumps through folded space without leaving a trail. The kind of move the Council swore no species should ever attempt. But humans weren't playing by rules anymore. They were writing their own. A month later, on the edge of neutral space, a lone Council destroyer received a distress call from a transport convoy allegedly under pirate attack. Standard protocol demanded investigation. When they arrived, the convoy didn't exist. But 3 Widow-class ships did. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't demand surrender. They just erased the destroyer from existence. There were no survivors. The Council labeled it a tragic pirate raid. But behind closed doors, they said the word they never wanted to say again. Humans. Ryan stood aboard the bridge of the first Widow ship, codenamed Echo of Fire. He watched the burn pattern in the distance, the faint residue left by the enemy ship's destruction. His jaw was tight. We didn't take prisoners, Mara said softly. We warned them, Ryan replied. 12 times. We gave speeches, petitions, proof. They didn't listen. So now they'll feel us. Mara looked at him, something heavy behind her eyes. You think we're becoming the thing they accused us of being? Ryan didn't blink. No, he said. We're becoming the thing they feared. The council didn't speak of Earth anymore. The word was banned in all formal proceedings. The human threat, they called it now, a vague term spoken like a disease, like a ghost, like a mistake they didn't want to admit was still breathing, still planning, still watching. But the truth was worse. Humanity wasn't planning a return. They were already inside. 3 standard days after the Echo of Fire erased a council destroyer from space, Sector 9 relay node in the Zephyrian corridor collapsed under its own internal gravity. No explosives, no hostile contact. The collapse was spontaneous, impossible under standard physics. The only trace? A corrupted data file uploaded moments before the failure. When the Council's forensic units decrypted the last frame, they found a single message pulsing in black and red. Exiled does not mean eradicated. Panic followed. 7 stations were locked down, hundreds of satellites deactivated. The Council, bloated and used to control, suddenly found itself blind. Back in the outer fringes of Epsilon X-42, Ryan stood inside a blacked-out command deck beneath the new colony of Ashvale. He was surrounded by war-hardened faces, people who had never worn medals but had earned scars deeper than any uniform could show. Mara projected a series of blurred star charts onto the wall, each one blinking red with interference. Council comms are breaking up across 28 systems. We've infected nearly 1/5 of their internal networks. They can't track our jump trails anymore. Any retaliation? Ryan asked. Kepler stepped forward, face drawn from sleepless nights. Nothing organized, but they're scared. Random patrols, lockdowns, panic. They're looking in all the wrong places. Ryan nodded. Good, he said. Let's keep them afraid of the shadows. The room went quiet. Then Callan spoke. I know fear works, he said. But eventually they'll find a name, a target. They'll unite. Ryan's stare was cold. Then we make sure that unity comes too late. Deep inside Council territory, there was a place that didn't officially exist. The Obsidian Hold. A prison mind facility. A place where they sent prisoners whose minds posed more danger than their bodies. The worst offenders. Revolutionaries. Traitors. Thinkers. Among them was a man the galaxy had long forgotten. Saren Vale, ex-council strategist, born on Mars, half human, half Talari. Once a rising star in the diplomatic corps until he published a paper on the council's manipulation of developing species. That paper cost him his career, and his freedom. He'd been silent for 21 years. Until now. At 0300 standard cycle, a guard entered his chamber. We've had an offer, the guard said. From ghosts. Saren Vale blinked and smiled. Back on the Arclight, the war room lit up with incoming signals. Smugglers, traders, information brokers. The rogue network known as the Rust Circuit had finally answered the call. They weren't loyal. They weren't honorable. But they hated the Council. And hate was enough. Through encrypted packets, the truth began to flow. Troop movements, fuel lines, military secrets the Council thought were buried. Ryan watched it all, piece by piece, like a man assembling the bones of a sleeping monster. This, Kepler whispered, staring at a schematic of the Council's central fleet port on Eros 7. This is suicide. Ryan turned to him. It's not an attack, not yet. Then what is it? A warning. 1 week later, 3 Council warships docked on Aero 7 detonated simultaneously. Internal systems, no external damage. Detonations timed to spread panic but leave survivors. Everyone on board lived. But no one walked away untouched. The flames didn't kill, they whispered. On every surviving monitor, the same phrase looped, "We built this galaxy while you tore us down. We are the exiles. We remember." Within the inner chambers of the High Council, silence reigned. Varys, the chairman, stood before the others. He no longer looked certain. His voice wasn't arrogant, it was tired. "We made a mistake." "No," hissed the Plixian delegate. "They made the mistake. We gave them every chance. We offered peace." "Peace through chains," muttered one of the younger ambassadors. That earned a sharp look. The room was cracking. Fractures in the alliance. Some species had quietly begun asking if maybe Earth was right. Maybe the Council had gone too far. Maybe exile wasn't justice. Maybe it was fear. In Ashvale, the first generation nest came online. It wasn't a military base, not a city. It was a plan, a blueprint. Dozens of underground complexes connected by skip tunnels and shielded by radiation fields. Self-sufficient, undetectable, and designed to survive extinction events. Humans, and their growing number of allies, had accepted a brutal truth. The Council might eventually find them. And if they did, they'd come not to talk, but to erase. So the nests weren't just fallback options, they were legacy vaults. So even if the war was lost, the future wouldn't be. Rian walked through the dark corridors of Nest 1. Not with pride, but with resolve. Mara walked beside him, holding a hollow slate. Population hit 180,000 last week. 8 different species now. Birth rates are increasing. This is no longer a fleet. It's a civilization. And civilizations attract enemies. They already have. Ryan turned to her. She showed him the data. Council operatives. Sabotage. Someone had leaked coordinates. "They're coming," she whispered. Ryan didn't blink. "Let them." 2 weeks later, a small scouting party of Council elite entered Sector Epsilon X-42. 5 ships, stealth-enabled, elite strike force. They found nothing, because the fleet was gone. And as they turned to leave, a signal beacon activated beneath them, planted on an asteroid they hadn't noticed. A final message. "We are not lost. We are not gone. We are already inside your walls." That same day, Council treasury systems across 5 sectors crashed. Fuel convoys were rerouted into empty space. Planetary taxes were funneled into phantom accounts. 500 billion galactic credits vanished. Gone. The Council tried to spin it as a glitch. But the people, across hundreds of star systems, had already started, whispering. The name they'd buried. The race they'd tried to erase. Humans. Saren Vale, now extracted from the Obsidian Hold and safely housed in Ashvale Nest 3, stared at the Council schematics. "You don't need to beat them with firepower," he said. "You just need to remind them what real fear feels like." Ryan nodded. "So how do we break them?" "You already have." He pointed at the reports. "They're paranoid, breaking apart. Their allies are doubting. Their civilians are rioting. You think war will destroy them? No. War gives them purpose. But confusion kills empires." Ryan stared at the map, and in that moment he understood. Humanity wasn't fighting a war. It was unraveling a lie. Mara stood beside Ryan at the edge of the launch bay. Widow-class ships floated quietly, engines off, waiting. Not to attack, but to vanish into deep space and reappear in the heart of the Council's blind spots. "We started this with pain," Mara said. "And we'll end it with truth," Ryan replied. She turned to him. "What happens when they beg for peace?" He didn't answer for a long time. Then finally, then they kneel in the dirt they made us eat, and they remember who they cast out. It started with a broadcast, not a hack, not a virus, a raw, open transmission, deliberate and unmistakable. Every major news channel across the Council's inner worlds flickered mid-broadcast. Political talk shows, commerce updates, even military alert systems. They all froze. And then the image appeared. A man, face worn by fire, dressed in a plain, dark shirt. No flag behind him, no war banners, just eyes that stared straight into billions of homes like they had a right to be there. Ryan. The voice was calm, deep, patient. You told the galaxy we were animals, that we were broken, that exile was mercy. His tone never shifted. He didn't shout. You sterilized our cities. You poisoned our sky. You stripped our children of a future, all in the name of peace. Static trembled behind him. An eerie silence like the universe itself was listening. You failed to kill us. He leaned closer. Now we're everywhere. The screen blinked once, and then went black. Just one message stamped into the signal. We are the cost of your lies. Panic bloomed instantly. Markets collapsed across the inner ring. Trade routes were frozen. Entire border stations emptied within hours, civilians fleeing on rumors alone. They weren't running from a fleet. They were running from an idea. Because for the first time since the exile vote, the Council's citizens realized something horrifying. The humans had not begged for mercy. They had evolved into a threat too large to contain. Inside the hidden command deck of the Arclight, Ryan sat silent while the Council's reaction reports streamed in. Riots in Laura Prime. Desertions from Council military stations. Small colonies broadcasting support for the exiled rebellion. And then, something unexpected. A message. Encrypted. Ancient code. From a Council diplomat, Iron Hoth, a name Ryan hadn't heard in over a decade. Kepler read it aloud, slowly. They're offering dialogue. They want to talk, Commander. Mara frowned. They're stalling. Of course they are, Ryan replied, standing. But we talk anyway. Why? Kepler asked. They'll lie. Again. They always lie. Because we're not them, Ryan said. We don't fear words. We use them. He looked over the holographic map. Thousands of refugee ships, colony nodes, sleeper fleets. They tried to kill humanity. We became something else. Let's show them what that means. 3 days later, in the dead sector of Varnal Drift, a ceasefire zone was agreed upon. No warships, no escorts, no surveillance, just a black station, abandoned since the mining wars, now lit up by the ghosts of 1,000 broken treaties. Inside, Ryan walked into the room alone, waiting for him. Iron Hoth, once Earth's liaison to the Council. She looked older, not by age, but by weight. Guilt, regret, and maybe fear. You could have come back to the table, she said quietly. There were voices sympathetic to Earth. You had options. You voted to exile us, Ryan said flatly. I didn't. You didn't stop it. She looked down. What do you want, Ryan? He stepped closer. I want every file, he said. Every operation. Every classified record of what was done to Earth. I want it all opened to the public. No edits, no excuses. That would fracture the Council, she warned. Good. She looked at him again, more carefully this time. And if they say no? Ryan's eyes were cold, clear. Then we stop being ghosts. In the underground bunkers of Nest 2, Saren Vale watched the rising data tide with a quiet, clinical detachment. The rebellion was no longer just a military resistance. It was becoming an ideological virus, a story too compelling to ignore. Once you control the narrative, he said to Mara. You don't need to fire shots. The Empire crumbles from doubt. She didn't look convinced. They'll retaliate, she said. They always do. Seyran nodded. Let them. Every time they strike, they prove our story true. Retaliation came faster than expected. The Council didn't just deploy warships. They deployed exocleansers, weapons that weren't meant to kill rebels, but to erase entire biomes. Ashvale's sister colony, Nest 4, never saw them coming. One moment it was alive, housing 6,000 souls. The next, it was nothing but a glassed crater in space. Ryan stood at the edge of the blast footage. No tears, no shaking, just silence. Behind him, dozens of survivors from nearby ships stood waiting, angry, broken. Some begged for vengeance, others for justice. He gave them neither. He gave them truth. They don't fear our fleets, he said, voice low. They fear our survival. They fear that no matter what they destroy, we rise again. He turned to face them. This isn't a war of revenge anymore. It's a war of truth against control, and truth doesn't flinch. Across the galaxy, cracks deepened. The Council tried to censor the destruction of Nest 4, claiming it was a weapons mishap during a pirate conflict. But witnesses had already leaked the truth. Children incinerated by orbital fire. Civilians turned to shadows in seconds. More systems began defecting. Not all at once, but in whispers. A freighter captain refusing a Council docking fee. A neutral colony denying patrol access. A fleet of old mining ships sending fuel to the exiles. Tiny rebellions. But rebellions nonetheless. Inside Ashvale, new banners were being raised. Not flags of conquest, but memorial colors. Symbols for every lost world, every vanished family, every silenced voice. The people started calling themselves not Terrans, not humans, but Ashborn, born from destruction, raised by exile, reforged by truth. Ryan visited the outer perimeter of the new Widow-class shipyard, now churning out vessels 3 times faster than before. We've got pilots lining up before the frames are finished, Mara said, walking beside him. Not just humans. Some aren't even from Council races. They believe in the fight, Ryan replied. No, she corrected. They believe in you. That made Ryan pause. He hated it. I'm not a savior. You're something worse, she said. You're the proof they tried to erase, and that terrifies them. Meanwhile, Seyran was assembling a new weapon. Not a bomb, not a virus, a data chain, a digital death sentence, a complete, unaltered copy of the Council's internal black archives. Every secret, every war crime, every hidden vote, every sterilization protocol, including the one that targeted Earth. He called it Eclipse. Once released, the Council wouldn't just fall apart. It would implode. Ryan looked at the final file. Earth, Lagos, Nairobi, Mumbai, New York. Names listed as soft targets, labeled as structural destabilization zones, marked for culling long before the exile vote. You knew this the whole time? He asked. Seyran nodded. I wanted to believe they'd stop. Ryan handed the file back, hands trembling for the first time in years. They never planned to stop. The Council met again in emergency session. Vriss stood before them, frail now, older, haunted. We are not fighting a war, he said. We are watching the collapse of our myth. The humans are no longer enemies. They are the echo of everything we pretended we weren't. Some still shouted for retaliation, but others were silent, afraid, not of humans, but of history. Because if the Eclipse data ever went public, their entire civilization would be stained in blood, and there would be no forgiveness. Back on the Arclight, the Eclipse countdown had begun. 1 week, 7 days, and the truth would be free. unless the Council surrendered everything first. 7 days. That's all the time the Council had before Eclipse went live. The file had already been copied onto 1,000 decentralized networks, fragments woven into jump logs, encrypted inside ship manifests, hidden in the biometrics of refugees. Even if Ryan died tomorrow, even if the arc light was torn apart atom by atom, it was too late. The truth was coming, and there was no way to stop it. Inside the Ashvale command bunker, the air was thick with static and anticipation. Tactical teams ran constant drills. Engineers rotated in shifts without sleep. The Widow-class shipyard pulsed like a living organism, birthing silent weapons faster than anyone thought possible. But none of it felt like victory. Ryan stood at the edge of the central hollow map, arms crossed, eyes darker than the void beyond the fleet. He hadn't slept in 40 hours. He didn't need to. He knew what was coming. "They're going to attack before Eclipse drops," Mara said, entering with a hard drive in her hand. "Intercepted chatter. They've got a strike fleet, Omega Vow. It's heading straight for us." Ryan didn't flinch. "How many ships?" 70, flagged as diplomatic security vessels, but they're loaded." "Let them come," Ryan said, jaw tight. "We've held back long enough." Mara set the drive on the table. "This is everything Eclipse contains. You should know what's about to go public." He didn't move to touch it. "I already know," he said quietly. "I lived it." On the edge of Ashvale territory, in a system with no name, 3 human destroyers drifted near, silent. No running lights, no comms. Waiting. Callan, now Fleet Admiral of the Ashbourne Defense Corps, stood aboard the Widow's Howl, scanning the empty dark ahead of him. The Council fleet would be here soon. Not to invade, not even to conquer, to erase. It was their final trick. Not a war, not a declaration, just plausible deniability. One more missing colony. One more accidental ion storm. Callan adjusted the grav lock on his shoulder rig. "We don't give them that chance," he muttered. When the Council fleet dropped out of warp, it didn't hesitate. No hails, no warnings, just missiles. 4 colonies went dark in minutes. Storage depots, food bays, and 1 medical ship. Ashvale's outer ring screamed, but no help came. The attack had been too fast, too sudden. Ryan heard the reports as they came in. Panic from civilian comms, half-screamed transmissions, signals that cut out mid-sentence. He didn't rage. He didn't order counterfire. He simply whispered, "Deploy the curtain." Across the Ashvale network, curtain protocol initiated. Every active AI, every stolen node, every hacked beacon in Council space activated at once. Not to fire, to blind. Thousands of decoy ships filled their sensors. False gravity signatures, fake heat maps, AI-generated comm traffic. The Council fleet systems began to short. Pilots reported targets that weren't there. Weapons locked onto shadows. Missiles missed by light years. They couldn't see. But humanity could. And that's when the Widow fleet struck. Callan's destroyers came in from below the orbital plane. Silent, blacked out, masked by curtain static. The first strike took out the Council's comms hub. The second hit their propulsion cores. The third, a kinetic lance designed to crack carrier hulls, split their command vessel in half. By the time the Council realized what was happening, half their fleet was already gone. The rest ran. No retreat orders, no dignity, just terror. They had walked into the ghost sector expecting to erase Earth's remnants. Instead, they'd awakened the consequence of genocide. Back in the Ashvale war room, the celebration was brief. Mara stood before the holoscreen, watching Council ships scatter. "They underestimated us again," she said. They'll keep underestimating us, Ryan muttered. Right up until we end them. He finally reached for the hard drive Mara had left earlier, the full Eclipse archive. He plugged it in, and the room filled with light, video footage, voice logs, interrogation transcripts, sterilization votes, classified meetings where council leaders debated whether humanity was too volatile to coexist. There were minutes from the soul silencing directive. Orders from the high chair authorizing controlled collapses of population density zones, the burning of Lagos, the freezing of Tokyo, the blinding of Nairobi, sanctioned, voted on, applauded. Rian stood motionless as the files played. Behind him, Mara's voice shook. They knew what they were doing. They always did, Ryan replied. But how many more will deny it? She asked. Rian turned to her. That's why Eclipse goes public, because now they don't get to deny it anymore. In the deep halls of Ashvale's central tower, Saren Vale prepared the transmission. The Eclipse protocol would deploy across every known council channel. Civilian, military, academic, medical. It would drop raw data into the hands of every species that had once trusted the Council's lies. The horror wouldn't be hidden anymore. Truth, naked and bloody, irrefutable, unforgivable. T-6 hours. Ryan called a gathering of all fleet leaders. Not in secret, not behind walls, but in front of every civilian who chose to watch. They gathered in the open forum, the long amphitheater lined with scrap metal, salvaged plastic, and shattered remnants of old Earth ships. A cathedral built from ruin. He stepped into the center, face marked by war, eyes burning with something colder than fire. We didn't choose this war, he said. They made it. They carved it into our homes, into our bones. They built empires on our silence. His voice didn't rise. It sank into every heart. But silence ends tonight. He turned to the sky. They wanted to erase us. Now we erase their mask. Eclipse launched, and the galaxy changed. It began with confusion, then came outrage, then came chaos. Across dozens of species, riots erupted. Statues of council leaders were torn down. Military outposts were overrun by their own soldiers. Council loyalists defected. Embassies burned. Because everyone saw it. The vote, the sterilization plans, the genocide. Earth hadn't been a tragedy. It had been a decision. On Yutari Prime, Vriss watched as his homeworld spiraled into rebellion. He had led the exile vote. He had smiled when humanity burned. Now the people burned his name. He looked into a mirror and whispered something that had haunted him for decades. We should have killed them all. But it was too late. Humanity had done something worse than survive. It had told the truth, and the galaxy believed them. Back on the arc light, Mara entered Ryan's quarters. He sat alone, staring out at the stars. It's done, she said. He nodded once. They'll call us monsters now, she added. They already did, he replied. But now, we're the ones holding the story. He turned to her, something distant in his expression. And stories shape the future more than bullets ever could. In the distance, more ships arrived. Outcasts, exiles, species once enslaved by council law. They came without flags, without demands, just hope and fire in their blood. They came to join the Ashborn, not as soldiers, but as believers. The galaxy had never been quiet. Trade ships hummed, military chatter clicked, stations buzzed with the endless rhythm of stability, synthetic peace carefully managed by the Council's invisible hand. But after Eclipse, that noise was gone. The galaxy screamed now, not from battle, from awakening. News footage from Yatari Prime showed citizens dragging council banners through the mud. On Valexa, police drones were hacked mid-flight and turned on their masters. And in the Tarsan core worlds, long considered untouchable, a rebellion of students took control of a diplomatic tower, broadcasting eclipse data live for 36 hours before being wiped out. They died holding signs. We believe Earth. Exile is genocide. No forgiveness, no forgetting. Inside the Arclight, Commander Ryan stood in silence as the outer colony's support signals poured in. Not military alliances, not trade pacts, but defections. One by one, old council worlds disconnected from the network, refusing to relay commands. Fuel stations withheld refueling from loyalist vessels. Local governments declared neutrality or solidarity with the Ashborn. For the first time, the Council had no control over the story. And when you lose the narrative in a galaxy built on lies, you lose everything. Callan sat in the Widow-class command center, helmet off, bruises fresh from the Omega Vow engagement. He was still sore from the last battle, but something else sat heavier on his chest. He looked at Ryan across the secure channel. "You know they're going to launch something big now, right?" Ryan didn't blink. "They don't have many moves left." "They have one." Callan paused, voice gravel hard. "They still have Earth." The room went still. No one had spoken that word with intent in years. Earth, abandoned, ruined, bombed, poisoned. The shell of what it once was. Everyone in the Ashborn fleet had accepted it was lost. But the Council hadn't. Satellite footage leaked through the rust circuit showed Council excavation drones digging deep into Earth's old archives, searching for AI vaults, buried technology, black box war machines once deemed too dangerous to destroy. They weren't just covering up the past. They were weaponizing it. Mara burst into Ryan's quarters, slamming a data pad on the table. "This is real," she said. "They're going to turn Earth into a weapon, and blame us for what happens next." Rian stared at the images. Deep core mining on ancient Terran cities, recovered reactors, something large buried beneath the Himalayas, something the Council had kept sealed since before the exile. "What is it?" he asked. Saren Vale appeared in the doorway, looking pale. "You're not going to like the answer," he said. 2 hours later, in a sealed war room, Saren explained. "The Council kept it hidden under official terraforming records, but it's a weapon, human-designed, prototype, never completed." Ryan leaned forward. "What kind?" "A fusion-based atmospheric manipulator," Saren said. "They called it Judas Sun. It was supposed to control climate on barren worlds." "Let me guess," Mara said, arms folded. "The Council reworked it?" Saren nodded grimly. "They turned it into an extinction device. If activated, Judas Sun would ignite the upper atmosphere of any breathable planet, not destroy it with fire, but render it uninhabitable within hours. No survivors, no proof, just a dead planet. It wasn't just a superweapon, it was a cleaner." "Why haven't they used it?" Callan asked. Saren's voice dropped. "They want to blame us for it, trigger it from Earth, leak the footage, make the galaxy believe the Ashborn destroyed their own planet out of spite." Ryan's hands curled into fists. "They already erased our story once. Now they want to bury the ashes." No one said it aloud, but they all knew what had to happen. They would have to return to Earth, not to reclaim it, not to grieve, but to make sure the last lie never became truth. 3 days later, the Ashborn Spear Fleet launched from Ashvale. 600 vessels, armored and black, silent and starved for closure. No flags, no music, just purpose, their destination, the Sol system. Home. As the fleet entered the edge of the old Earth defense perimeter, long-dead satellites sprang to life. Council defense networks, half-functioning and corrupted, triggered orbital warnings across the galaxy. Council channels screamed, "Human fleet detected! Earth under assault!" A perfect setup. The Council was already spinning the narrative, and Judas' son was nearly ready. Inside the arc light, Ryan stared at Earth's image on the screen. It looked smaller than he remembered. Blue faded to ash, cities reduced to bone, ocean currents stilled. It wasn't just a world, it was a grave. Kepler's voice cut through the silence. Council forces inbound. 6 destroyers, 2 carriers, escorting a transport vessel, likely carrying Judas' son's core trigger. Mara added, "A2O, 11 hours. Callan's face appeared on the comms. "What's the plan?" Ryan exhaled. "We make sure they never write the ending." As battle preparations began, Ryan walked the corridors of the arc light. He didn't stop to give orders. He didn't give speeches. He just watched the faces. Young pilots who'd never seen Earth. Veterans who still had soil under their nails. Aliens who had never called it home, but had bled for the people who did. They didn't come for conquest. They came for truth. The battle began at 600 Sol time. It was brutal. Council ships launched decoys, seeded orbital space with anti-personnel mines. The Ashborn fleet answered with focused silence, striking surgical, hard, and fast. The Widow's howl cracked the first carrier in half with a blindfold jump. Ryan's orders were simple. "Hold Earth. Don't fire on it. Don't land on it. Just stop them." But the Council had a backup plan. A single drone ship, disguised as debris, broke atmosphere over the ruins of old Mumbai. It carried the final ignition key for Judas' son. It was small, fast, shielded. It only needed 2 minutes on the surface. Mara saw it first. "Drone on the ground, heading to fusion relay." No weapons could lock it from orbit. They had only one option left. Ryan stood still for a second, then turned. "I'll go." The Arclight's shuttle bay opened to void. Ryan, clad in a reinforced dropsuit, stood alone. No guards, no backup, only a single pilot, Kepler. "You sure about this?" Kepler asked. Ryan looked at Earth below. "Always." The dropship launched at max speed. They broke atmosphere in less than 5 minutes. The sky looked nothing like it had before. The clouds hung low and yellowed. The air, though technically breathable, stank of decay and old war. 10 seconds out," Kepler called. "Go dark," Ryan said. "I'll finish this on foot." He landed hard. Dust rose like smoke. The Mumbai relay stood before him, a twisted tower of scorched metal and black glass. Around it, the drone was already interfacing, wires digging into the earth like claws. He didn't hesitate. Ryan ran. His suit AI screamed warnings, radiation spikes, heat pressure, risk of neural collapse. He didn't care. He reached the drone as its core began to glow. And then he did the only thing left. He punched the override core with his bare, gloved hand, smashing into it with the full force of 1,000 years of exile. The machine sparked, then died. Up above, the Arclight watched as the relay flickered, then collapsed. Judas' son never ignited. Earth lived, still broken, still bleeding, but not erased. Ryan lay on the ground, chest heaving, the air inside his helmet crackling with static. Mara's voice finally came through. "You did it." He didn't answer right away. He was looking at something. A flower. A single violet blossom growing through the cracked stone. Alive. After all this time. Back on the Arclight, Callan watched the Council ships retreat. No farewell. No negotiation. Just fear. Because the last card had failed. And now they had nothing left but guilt. Ryan was brought back aboard. No cheers, No parades, just silence. Because now, the war was over. And what came next was even harder. Living. Earth was quiet. For the first time in a generation, there was no orbital fire, no council interference, no Ashborn retaliation. Just silence. The kind that felt less like peace and more like the aftermath of a scream that had torn the sky apart and left the stars holding their breath. Commander Ryan stood alone on the surface, the helmet of his suit off, the wind tugging at his hair. He stood beside the violet flower he'd found, the one that had somehow bloomed through ash and ruin. It was absurd. One stem, two small petals, fragile in a world designed to kill it. But it was there, alive. That was enough. Back aboard the Arclight, a council of their own had gathered. No titles, no bureaucracy, just voices. Callan sat at the edge of the long steel table, scarred arms crossed over his chest. He wasn't smiling. He didn't know how to anymore. He'd lived too long on adrenaline and grit. Now that the war was over, he looked heavier. Across from him, Saren Vale read the incoming reports aloud. 17 Council-aligned systems have declared full independence. 9 are actively requesting Ashborn advisors. 3 are preparing war trials, civilian-led, no tribunal involvement. Kepler added, "The rest are in chaos. We've had no formal resistance, but loyalist pockets are trying to regroup under new banners." Mara leaned forward. "So it's happening. The Council's dead." Siran looked up. "No, they're not dead. Not yet. They're scattered. Embarrassed, hunted. But not gone," Ryan finished, entering the room. He removed his gloves slowly, face drawn from the long descent to Earth's surface and back. Mara stood. "We thought you were staying down there longer." "I saw what I needed to," he said. "Anything left worth saving?" Callan asked. Ryan's jaw tensed. "No," he said, "but enough worth remembering." Later that night, in the Ashvale Comms Center, Ryan stood before the galaxy one last time. A broadcast. Not a threat. Not a warning. Not a demand. Just truth. Again. He wore no armor. No rank. Just plain clothes and a stare that could have carved stone. "To those still watching from the shadows, we see you." He paused. "You burned our homes. You stole our history. You cast us out and called it mercy." His voice was calm. "But we didn't come back for revenge. We came back to make sure you never get the chance to lie again." He stepped closer to the camera. "We are not the monsters you made us out to be. And we are not your victims either." Behind him, the Earth rotated in silence, broken, still, but whole. "We are the Ashborn, and we decide our future now." The message spread, but this time there was no panic, no riots, no screams, just a stillness across the stars, as if everyone, friend and foe alike, had finally accepted a truth too big to fight anymore. The Council never responded. Not officially. But within days, the old capital world of Therix Prime fell. Not to war, to silence. Their military refused orders. Their people stopped showing up for votes. Their system shut itself down. The last chair of the High Council, Viris, went into hiding. No trials, no execution, just exile. Fitting. He'd made humanity disappear once. Now it was his turn. In Ashvale, the rebuilding began. No parades, no monuments, only labor. Old Earth cities were mapped, not for reconstruction, but for remembrance. Great stone tablets were erected at key sites across the Ashborn territories: Lagos, Mumbai, Rio, Melbourne, Nairobi. Not to glorify, but to mark the wound. And in the center of Ashvale, beneath the dark towers and shipyards, the Ashborn built something else. The Library of Silence. A vault of stories. Uncensored. Every document, every speech, every vote, everything that had been scrubbed, burned, or rewritten by the council was restored and made public. Every child born after Eclipse would grow up knowing exactly what had been done. That was the real victory. Not vengeance. Memory. Ryan walked the halls of the library one night alone. He passed terminals where children sat in silence, reading about Earth's exile, listening to the audio logs of council delegates who once called for sterilization with a smile, watching footage of the burned-out cities. Some wept, some just stared, but none turned away. He moved deeper into the vault. Room 7, Ashbourne Manifesto, the digital shrine where the names of the dead were kept. He looked at the list. It still grew every day. Mara found him there, as always. She said nothing for a long time, just stood beside him. Two war-worn leaders staring at a sea of names that stretched from ceiling to floor. "I wonder," she finally said, "what kind of people we'll be now that no one's hunting us." Ryan turned to her. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether we remember what it felt like to be hunted." She nodded once, solemn. "I think we will." In the outer sectors, a vote was held. Not by warlords, not by generals, by the people, refugees, colonists, survivors. They chose to form the Ashbourne Accord, not a government, but a coalition, voluntary, no single leader, no central law, just one unbreakable promise: no race, no system, no being would ever again be silenced, exiled, or exterminated in the name of order. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Callan retired soon after. He vanished to the edge of the void, somewhere near Varnal Drift. No one knew exactly where. Rumors said he spent his days building homes for refugee families. Others said he couldn't look at a gun without remembering what it cost him. Ryan didn't chase him. Some men fight their war. Others carry it. Callan had done both. Kepler stayed. He helped rebuild the Arclight, not as a warship, but as a peace envoy, the first of the Ashbourne's new fleet, not designed to conquer, but to remind. It traveled system to system, sharing the Eclipse archive with those who asked, and sometimes those who didn't, because truth doesn't wait for permission. Saren Vale declined every leadership position offered. He remained a teacher. Every night, he walked the halls of the Library of Silence, surrounded by students of every species. He taught them to question, to rebel, to remember, and most importantly, to write everything down. Ryan remained in Ashvale. He never took a title, never claimed power. He spent his days among the workers, helping forge new ships, and at night he visited Earth, always landing in the same place, where the violet flower still bloomed. He never picked it, never touched it, just sat beside it in silence, like a man who'd seen the end of the world and refused to let it end him. One morning, Mara joined him. She sat beside him, brushing the dirt from her hands. "You still coming here every day?" He nodded. "It's the one place they never touched." She looked at him carefully. "You think we did the right thing?" He didn't answer right away. Then he looked up at the cloudless sky and said, "No. But we did the necessary thing." They sat there for a long time, not speaking, just listening to the quiet. The kind of quiet that only comes after a storm has broken the world, and something new has begun to grow,